Good morning, and welcome everyone to the second webinar in our series about the Bead challenge process. My name is Jonathan Lackritz. I am the Program Manager for the Bead branch of the California Public Utilities Commission. Thank you for joining. We appreciate your engagement. Today, we are presenting an overview of the challenge process platform, license information, and pre-registration for the portal where you will be able to submit, view, and rebut challenges. We appreciated all those that took the time to submit questions in advance. We hope that our presentation today will address many of your questions about the portal, and we will make sure to address all questions you submit on the FAQ page on the CPUC's website. There will be many opportunities to both ask questions and to learn more about the challenge process in upcoming webinars and office hour opportunities that will be more bi-directional with real-time questions and answers. We will share more information about this at the end of today's webinar. In addition, leading up to the solicitation process, there will be many opportunities to ensure applicants understand the program requirements and processes. We will notify stakeholders of each opportunity in advance so you won't miss a beat. We understand this is a historic program and will make every effort to help inform you. Today, we are pleased to have with us Clayton Woolley, Director of Technical Strategy from Ready.net, the portal developer for the CPUC's Challenge portal, as well as Amy Meacham, Director of State Broadband Programs at CTC. CTC serves as one of the CPUC's key contractors and partners in developing the Bead program. I will now hand it over to Amy to discuss the agenda for today's webinar. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you, Jonathan, and hello, everyone. As Jonathan said, I am Amy Meacham, Director of State Broadband Programs at CTC Technology and Energy. Our company has been supporting the CPUC throughout the Bead process, and I am pleased to be with you here today. Let me start by presenting our agenda. Thank you for joining us for this session. As you know, this is a historic moment for broadband. The CPUC is committed to providing as much information as possible during the Bead planning process to ensure full participation and the greatest impact on broadband coverage throughout California. As Laura mentioned, today is focused on helping you get familiar with the Challenge portal and encouraging registration and licensing to access the portal and the full data set. Today, we will start with an overview of the Bead program in general, and then an overview of the model challenge process in particular. After we've given you that context for this program, we will give you more into the particulars of the portal and the platform for submitting challenges. This will start with a discussion of licensing and data access, which is for this FCC fabric and the FCC fabric that CostQuest developed. Then we will walk through some demonstrations of the Challenge portal. Specifically, we will go over the Challenge portal pre-registration and then provide a general overview of the portal's function and layout. We will then conclude with information about future webinars and next steps about how to participate in the Challenge process. And apologies, Jonathan, I meant to say Jonathan. A little housekeeping before we begin. We may have some reminders and tips to help you get the most out of the webinar. We've provided English closed captions, which you can access by selecting Show Captions. If you have any questions, we very much welcome them. Please submit them using the Q&A function on Zoom. In the Q&A function, you can submit questions and view other attendees' questions. If someone else posts a question that you would also like to know the answer to, please upvote it so we know that it is a popular question. While we will not be able to answer your questions live during the meeting, we will record them, and then the answers will be added to the frequently asked questions or the FAQs on the CPUC's Bead Challenge process webpage. During the last webinar, we received many questions, and we are currently reviewing them and drafting responses. The FAQ will be uploaded shortly to the CPUC website for your review, and will be continually updated leading up to the Challenge process and all throughout the process. Please keep an eye on the chat for useful links. Please also keep an eye out for the chat for helpful links throughout the webinar. And as a final note, this webinar is being recorded and will be posted on the CPUC website for a review of the information provided. Now that we've covered the housekeeping items, we can dive into the substance of our webinar. So let's begin to cover what the Bead program is, how the model challenge process works within the Bead program, and the licensing you can acquire to assist with the challenges, how to pre-register for the challenge portal, and how the portal works overall. One important note is the initial presentation is based on NTIA's model challenge process, which is the template example that NTIA provided for each state to then base their own individual challenge process on. While the initial proposal, Volume 1, has been approved by NTIA, the CPUC's challenge process still requires approval from the Commission, and as such, this webinar provides accurate information about the requirements and phases of the process, but has not been adapted to any potential additions or different approaches that the CPUC may implement for the state. Some questions about specific dates or policies for the challenge process will be answered once that approval has been issued. Now, I'd like to go over to the Bead Challenge portal as the focus of this webinar, or I'd like to go over the Bead Challenge portal as the focus of the webinar, but also provide some context for that. We'll start with a brief overview of the Bead program and then move to the challenge process. The challenge process is part of the Bead program, which stands for Broadband Equity, Access, and Deployment Program. It was created by Congress in the Bipartisan Infrastructure, Investment, and Jobs Act, or IIJA, in 2021. Throughout the Bead program, Congress allocated $42.5 billion in federal funding and designated the National Telecommunications and Information Administration, known as the NTIA, to administer it. It is the agency that sets the requirement and phases of the program, and the CPUC is submitting proposal documents to it to provide a plan for California's use of the funds. The Bead program overall is to expand high-speed internet through infrastructure deployment across the U.S., and California's proposal will specifically address the state's plan within the state to make sure that everyone has access to high-speed internet throughout California. The primary use of these funds will be infrastructure projects to build out service to unserved and underserved areas. In terms of funding priorities, those terms unserved and underserved are critical because there are three main priorities for Bead funding allocations, which are listed here in order. The first priority is an unserved area, defined as locations with internet speeds under 25 megabits per second downloaded and 3 megabits per second up. Then the second priority is underserved areas, defined as those with internet service between 25 megabits down, 3 megabits per second up, and 100 megabits per second down and 20 megabits per second upload. They will receive funding after the unserved areas have been connected. Finally, if there are funds left over after the unserved and underserved areas, then the state can turn to community anchor institutions such as schools, libraries, hospitals, community centers. They can receive funding if they do not have current access to a gigabit symmetrical service. So that's 1 gigabit down, 1 gigabit up, or more. NTI uses its broadband data collection map to determine whether such locations are served, unserved, and underserved, which is based on service provider reported data. There are many unserved and underserved areas within California, and NTIA states that they should be the primary priority for the Bead funding. Now let's turn to California. California has been allocated $1.86 billion in Bead funds for infrastructure. These funds will be available once the CPUC has completed the federally funded planning sequence, which includes plans and proposals. Planning for Bead took place in 2023, and in mid-year 2024, the CPUC will run the challenge process and begin the subgrantee selection process to grant funds to projects that serve unserved and underserved locations. Exact dates for the challenge process are yet to be determined, and deployment should start in 2025. The Bead timeline covers the sequence of activities the CPUC is engaged in for the Bead program. Community engagement and outreach is a critical component of the Bead program. Outreach began in 2023 and will continue during the entirety of the Bead program, both during planning and the implementation phases. The State Digital Equity Planning Grant is administered by the California Department of Technology, which conducted planning activities in 2023. The final Digital Equity Plan was approved in March of 2024. Both the State Digital Equity Capacity Grant Program and the Digital Equity Competitive Grant Program will be administered later this year or in the coming year. Planning for the Bead program last year began and is continuing through this year. The final proposal will be submitted to NTIA for approval next year. The challenge process and subgrantee selection process, which is the grant program within the Bead program, will continue through the end of this year and run into 2025. Now let's turn to the challenge process itself, which will begin this summer. Now you may be asking, what is the purpose of the Bead challenge process? Since the Bead program aims to bring high-speed internet service to unserved and underserved locations, we first need to confirm which areas are unserved and underserved. The challenge process provides a mechanism to update the map to establish eligible locations and eligible community anchor institutions that should be included for Bead funding. It gives eligible challengers the chance to offer input on whether certain locations are not accurately reported in the FCC data and therefore should be eligible for Bead funding. Now, why is this so important to participate in the process? It's important because it allows the state and you, whether you are a local government, a tribal nation, nonprofit, or a broadband service provider, to update the data that determines where Bead funding will be allocated and get it approved from NTIA. If the map is currently inaccurate, you can submit evidence for updates. It is the state's best chance to correct that data, especially if any data that needs to be corrected. The challenge process will help achieve the Bead's program's goals and help prevent any misrepresentation of data. I'd like to note that the Bead challenge process follows a particular sequence as designed by NTIA in the model challenge process. First, eligible locations will be published at least 7 days before the challenge process window opens, which allows any potential challengers to look at the data as it is currently on Federal Communications Commission or FCC maps. Then comes the challenge phase. That's the official beginning of the challenge process. Once the challenge window opens, eligible challengers will have 30 days then to submit challenges, including all required evidence. After the challenge phase comes the rebuttal phase. In the rebuttal phase, if a challenge has been issued for a location, then broadband service providers or other rebutters can provide evidence to counter that challenge. The rebuttal phase also lasts for 30 days. After the rebuttal phase comes the final determination phase. During this phase, the CPUC will arrive at a determination or a final determination on a disputed challenge and then publish the list of eligible locations that has resulted from the challenge process. The conclusion of the final determination and publishing of that final list will happen within 120 days of the beginning of the challenge phase, as you can see on the timeline. All of this happens according to NTI's guidelines and is subject to NTI review and approval. So at the end of the process, NTI will also review and approve the final list of eligible locations. So who can submit a challenge? The NTIA considers only the following entities as eligible challengers: local governments, tribal governments, nonprofit organizations, and internet service providers, or ISPs. Can individuals participate? The NTIA does not allow individuals to submit challenges directly. However, California residents will still play an important role in the challenge process. They can identify inaccuracies and work with eligible participants, such as local governments, tribal nations, or nonprofits, to challenge the maps. The CPUC will also provide specifics of individual residents' participation in future information releases and webinars. Now I'd like to get into more details in the challenge process. First, let's focus on the types of data that can qualify as a challenge. The aspects of service that can be challenged include internet speeds and other specifications, which we'll show in the following slides to determine Bead eligibility. Identifying community anchor institutions are challenging the eligibility of such CAIs in the data set. Identifying and challenging enforceable commitments or for specific locations. Identifying planned service or for specific locations. So over the next couple slides, we will show you the challenge types. For more information about each of these challenge types, you can see our last webinar, which has been posted on the CPUC website. The specific challenge types include availability, to show high-speed internet is not available at a specific location. Speed, to show that the speeds are below standard and considered to be served. The speeds are below standards of what is considered to be served. Latency, to show that service latency exceeds a certain amount. Data cap, to demonstrate that a plan has an unreasonable data restriction. Technology, if there are claims that a certain technology is available at a location where it is not. And business service only on this slide is if a business service is offered at a particular location, but not residential service. Now, continuing the challenge types, you can submit an enforceable commitment to show that a location will be served under an enforceable commitment. Planned service, to show that a location is planned to have service by the end of June 2024. Not part of an enforceable commitment, to show that a location is not bound by an enforceable commitment. Location of a CAI, to show that a location should be designated as a CAI, and just the opposite, location is not a CAI, to show that a location that is listed does not fit the definition of a CAI or is no longer at that location. One special type of challenge is an area or a multi-dwelling unit challenge or an MDU challenge. For both the area challenge and the MDU challenge, if a certain number of challenges are submitted in an area or an MDU, then an ISP takes on the burden of proof to show that all locations in that area are served. For example, in a census block group, if 6 or more locations are served by the same technology, same ISP are challenged, then the ISP must submit evidence to prove that the locations in the entire census block are served, even the locations that did not submit a challenge. Likewise, in an MDU challenge, if a large MDU has at least 3 units submit a challenge, and those are subscribed to the same ISP and same technology, then the ISP serving that MDU must submit evidence to prove that even the units that didn't submit a challenge are served. This applies for availability, speed, latency, data cap, and technology challenges. The ISP's rebuttal to the area and MDU challenges must show that at least 80% of the locations meet a specific threshold for these standards to be considered served. That will conclude our brief overview of the challenge process. Now that you have that background on what the challenge process is about, we can talk more details about the registration and licensing of in the portal. Starting with CostQuest licenses that will help you fully participate in the challenge process. The challenge process draws upon 2 data sets that map what locations can be challenged. These 2 data sets are the FCC location fabric and the broadband data collection. The FCC fabric, which has the full name of the Broadband Serviceable Location Fabric, is a data set of all locations where fixed broadband is or could be deployed. It's essentially a list of every building or structure that may need internet service and could have it delivered to that location. So when you put it into a map form, it's a collection of dots of serviceable locations. It was developed by the FCC in coordination with CostQuest. The challenge process uses the location data from the fabric as its foundation. This list of locations in the FCC fabric is a list of all locations that can have its service information or BEAD eligibility challenge. Please note that the challenge process cannot add or remove locations from the fabric. That has to be done separately through an FCC challenge. To access the FCC fabric fully, you are required to get a free license from CostQuest that we will talk about in the next few slides. Using the FCC fabric as the foundation, providing a list of serviceable addresses, the FCC's broadband data collection availability data records, the broadband data availability, it records the broadband availability and service that is associated with each of those addresses. Let me say that again. The FCC's broadband data collection, or the BDC, availability data records the broadband availability and service that is associated with each of those addresses from the fabric. The map gets major updates every 6 months in May and November with new service information. The last update was released in November 17th, 2023. So we're not sure the exact date of the new map and when that will be released, but it will be released later this month. Service data is what you can challenge in this data set: speeds, latency, availability, and so on. As mentioned in the last slide, you need to get a license to fully access the FCC Fabric dataset. These licenses are offered through CostQuest, and they come in various tiers, which are Tier D and Tier E. These are the tiers for the Bead Challenge process. The Tier D license is for internet service providers, and the Tier E license is for other eligible challengers, local governments, tribal nations, and nonprofits. Individuals cannot obtain a CostQuest license for the challenge process. So you might be wondering, what can I do without a fabric license and with one? One question that may come to mind: is it really necessary to have a CostQuest fabric license, or can you complete your challenges without one? While it is definitely possible to participate in the challenge process without a CostQuest license, the CostQuest license will greatly amplify your ability to research, analyze, and prepare any challenges. Without the license, you can still submit and rebut challenges through the portal directly, and you will be able to examine the portal map, which will show the location dots and service status. However, you will not be able to download the data set or see the address associated with each location dot or fabric ID. So while you can submit a challenge without the fabric license, you will not be able to see which address you are challenging in the portal, only the fabric ID location, or the fabric location ID number. With the license, you can match the location IDs given by the FCC to actual addresses. And that will enable you to research and prepare a challenge for a specific location or an area. You can also download the full data set and incorporate it into your own analytics, including GIS visualizations, to analyze potential challenges. You can include and download data, prepare your own files to submit in a bulk challenge for the challenge types that accept bulk challenges. Because these important tasks can only be done with a CostQuest license, we strongly recommend that all eligible challengers acquire one. The license is free, and we will step through the process with you today as to how to get one. All right, in order to get a CostQuest license, you must need to follow a few steps to fill out an application. You will need an FCC registration number, or FRN, to apply. So if you don't have one, and you will need to apply for such FRN with the FCC before proceeding. And then you would go to NTIA's license request for the tier that you are requesting. Insert basic information, confirm your email address, and advance to the next step. Then you would fill out more detail about your organization. You would input your information about federal programs you may be submitting information about and the geographic areas of your expected challenges, and then hit submit. After submitting, you will have to fill out license information in order to be approved. These slides and a recording of this webinar will be posted on the CPUC website, so you will be able to review and follow these steps at your own leisure. The other application you will need to participate in the Bead program is registering in the portal. In our next section, we will provide an explanation and a demonstration on how you can do that. As a note, the data that you can access with a license is protected by that license, so you should seek CostQuest licensing information about who is permitted to access the license data. So this wraps up our summary of the CostQuest Tier D and Tier E license information. Now we'll go into the section of our presentation about registration. But before we hand it over to Clayton Woolley from Ready.net, one note from the CPUC regarding the setting that eligible challenges can be selected during pre-registration. You can elect to submit challenges on behalf of individuals. And so let me repeat that. As an eligible challenger, again, local government, tribal governments, nonprofits, and broadband service providers, you can elect to be open to submit challenges on behalf of individuals. As we mentioned already, residents will be able to submit evidence for challenge. In pre-registration, you will be asked if you would like to submit eligible or challenges on behalf of residents. The CPUC recommends that you select yes and choose to enable challenge submissions on behalf of residents. This will increase the amount of evidence that you can draw upon to submit challenges and therefore increase your effectiveness in the challenge process. The CPUC will provide resources and other materials and hold a webinar for entities or hold information for entities submitting challenges using the individual's evidence, including a toolkit for work. Let me repeat that. The CPUC will provide a toolkit for working with individual evidence and challenges that will provide resources and materials for those choosing this option of allowing themselves to submit challenges on behalf of residents. So on the topic of pre-registration, it is really important that you only register for one account per entity and designate one user as the primary contact for your account. Please be careful not to create duplicate accounts. Only one person from each entity should pre-register. Let me repeat that because it is a really important piece of information that is often overlooked. It is important that only one person from each entity should pre-register. Be thinking about who that person is now. Second, for speed test submissions, we will walk through how to submit speed tests in the following sections. You can use third-party speed test platforms approved by NTIA. The CPUC and Ready will also provide a speed test module where you can run and submit speed tests directly in the challenge portal. This module will be available to eligible challengers and to individuals. The CPUC will cover this module in the webinar about how to engage with individual evidence and submission from residents. Finally, in the data set will show in the demonstration today will not be the finally updated data that will be active in the challenge portal. The data we will show in the demonstration is a past version that is for demonstration purposes only. So now, with that, I'll hand over the presentation to Clayton Woolley from Ready.net, who will do our live demonstration of registration in the portal. Clayton.
All right, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Next slide, please. So in this slide, we have some information as well as some of the visuals, which we are going to cover in live demo in just a moment. The registration page link should be posted momentarily and will also be available past the webinar. Next slide, please. What we're about to cover in the demonstration during the registration portion is the general information as well as specific information that you might need per entity. Again, this information is spelled out here. It will be in the user guide, and also the portal will guide you to filling out what you need for your organization to become registered. Next slide, please. So when you send off your request for an account, you should receive an email as confirmation. And then within a couple of days, you should receive an additional email either confirming that your account has been approved and you can proceed with account setup and registration, or that you might need to submit additional information. Next slide, please. So now we're going to switch over and I will walk everyone through the registration as well as submitting the challenge process. So following the link, this is the page that it will take you to. So it's a brief overview, and this will be updated and added to over time as we go throughout this process. But what will be available today is the actual registration link. And you can see there's some additional information on this page. So when I click register now, it will take me to the registration landing page, where again, you'll see some information on the NTIA fabric licenses for both Tier D and Tier E, and additional links to the policy language. So walking through, once you've identified the person on your team who will be the designated point of contact, you want to direct that person to this page and this link here. And you can see we have, oh, sorry, we started right there. All right. So the first bit, this is where we'll enter in the general information. This will be required for all organizations. So I'm going to put in my information. Website is required. This should be the official website for your entity. Primary contact name, again, that is the person who is designated as the lead for your portal and for your organization for the challenge process. And we will also need their email. And we will also need their phone number. And then we'll walk through briefly the different types of accounts. So if you are local government, for example, you'll need EIN, which we talked about earlier, the resident challenges and the speed test that they'll be collecting. This is where you can say yes or no to accepting that evidence that individuals are able to collect. We do recommend that you select yes. And the next bit will be actually deciding where it is that your organization is focused. So you can select the entire state, which will populate the entire state in that data set on your map, or you can select individual counties. And you are able to select more than one county if you are not going to select the entire state. For the purposes of this demo, we will be selecting the entire state. The next bit of information is the official address, city, state, and zip of your organization, as well as any supporting documentation that you might have. One important note here for nonprofits, there's an additional file upload, and this should be the documentation verifying your 501c3 status, in addition to any other supporting documentation that you might have or want to submit to verify your identity. We also have tribal government. And for tribal government, something unique here is that we will need your tribe's name as listed by the Bureau of Indian Affairs. And then, of course, you have the rest of the flow, which is similar to the others. And then if you are a broadband service provider, we will need your EIN as well as your FRM. One thing to note here, all of the providers, when this is live, will be the providers that are listed in California. But if your company does not show up, you can select other and input your name, which will go to the verification step. So we are going to submit this so you can all see what happens after you hit submit. I'm going to say no. And then we'll put in some information for EIN. There we go. Address, city. I'm going to go California. Great. And I will upload a document here just for information purposes and select finish. Right, so after that, that's when the email should be triggered and hit your inbox, confirming that you have successfully submitted a registration request. And then, as mentioned earlier, in a couple of days, someone will reach out and let you know the status of your account or request additional information. Once you have been registered and have set up your account, this is the first page that you should see when you log in. This is going to be your challenge dashboard. So here you'll get some top line information on challenges submitted, challenges that need revision, or challenges that you've withdrawn. And you have different tools to filter and navigate. This is also where you can invite teammates. So as we talked about earlier, we need the designated point of contact to be the one to actually register and set up the master account. You are able to add teammates by invite to your portal and your account. You'll also notice up here in the top right, this is going to tell you which phase we're in on that timeline. And for the purposes of the demo today, we are in the challenge submission phase. This is not likely the phase that you will see when you first register if you pre-register. So next, moving on, we're going to take a look actually at the challenge map. It's important to note again that this is just preloaded data. This is not the final published map. That will be coming according to the timeline after plan approval, and we've finished uploading all of the pre-challenge modifications. There are several tools built into the portal meant to help you navigate the process and analyze the map. One thing to pay close attention to are the different eligibility. So these are the pre-challenge eligibility statuses of different BSLs or broadband serviceable locations. The main focus is going to be on these underserved and served BSLs. These are the ones that are actually eligible for a challenge and can change status, or unserved if you are a provider and believe that a location is in fact served. You can walk through the flow and submit evidence accordingly. So we'll go back to these filters and take a look here at these different location sets which are eligible for challenge. You can also filter by business or by building type. So this is the type of BSL. So for instance, here, I just have residential. I could also switch the filters and just take a look at business, enterprise, mixed use, or multi-dwelling units. It's also possible to filter by the different types of community anchor institutions. You have a slider here for unit count. So if you're focused on individual, you can slide that all the way down to 1. If you're focused on multi-dwelling units, you can adjust accordingly to the threshold. You can also have a filter and view just CAI or not CAI, and CAI is community anchor institution. You can also filter down here, excuse me one moment, by funding program. If you want to look at previously funded broadband serviceable locations, you can search by technology. So here I'm filtering to just show copper or fiber to the prim. I could also filter to just show cable, satellite, etc. And then as we talked about earlier with the different area challenges, we have preloaded census block groups, which you can toggle on and off if you're interested in area challenges. And then we also have a couple of different views for the map. So you can see those there, depending upon your preference. Something that can be useful as you're going through this process is you can actually create a zone to conduct a little bit of analysis as you're preparing for your challenge process. There are 3 different ways to create a zone. So I'm going to name this one Test Zone 3. You have the ability to add a tag and create one if you want to categorize some of your zones. And there are 3 different methods to actually create a zone. So if I'm focused on Ripon here, I can go in and draw a zone like this by selecting the different points on the map and then double clicking to close that out. I can upload, if your organization has shapefiles in the KMZ, KML, or GeoJSON format, you can upload some of the work that you've already done into this portal and see which broadband serviceable locations are falling in those areas. Or you can select from our predefined and filled shapefile library. So if you notice here, it's limited to California, and then you can divvy up by congressional district, city, rural electric cooperative, telco territory, county, or tribal area. So we'll go with city, and then drop down, you see all the different options. So I'll select Greenville, select OK. It's going to take me over to Greenville, and this is the census block defined city boundaries. So I'm going to save that zone, and we'll use it a little bit later in demonstration purposes. So now moving on from the navigation, I guess one last navigation piece here. You can search by individual address, and it will take you to one. So now we're going to go and walk through one of the challenge types. So when I go through, I see the different challenge types menu, as well as link to different guidelines. For today's purposes, we're going to focus on a provider service level challenge type and specifically speed. But it should be noted all the different challenges are here with guardrails built in to help you submit evidence for a successful challenge. So we're going to click into provider service level, and I'm going to select speed. So again, here on the provider service level, here are all the different types that we covered earlier, and we'll be sharing additional information on post this webinar. So I'm going to click into speed. MDU module is available, but we are not going to demonstrate an MDU today. And so now we're going to go in and take a look at these filters again. So not singling out any provider, just going with a well-known provider. We're going to select AT&T locations. So they're from the list here. And then you'll notice the map change again based on the selected technology type that you are attempting a challenge for. So today we'll go with an optical carrier fiber to the prem type challenge. So I'm going to select next. And then this is where we can go back to the areas. So if you have defined an area that will be here in the dropdown, you can also create a new area by going back here and adding new zones. But because of this challenge type, which is limited to one up here in the information section, we're just going to select one on the map. So I'll go in and click. And so this is an individual address. I'd like to find one that's an MDU real quick, just to show you some of the navigation. Here we go. So this is one where there are multiple addresses at this point. So then I can go over here to the navigation pane and actually select those different addresses. Again, this is for demonstration purposes. The map will be updated to reflect what can be shared. So here are the different providers actually at this location. So I'm going to add here, and what I'll be doing today is an AT&T fiber to the prem challenge. But you'll notice there are several different providers here that would need to be challenged separately to complete a successful challenge here. So there we go. I have that location loaded in. The next bit, you can download the location spreadsheet. As we alluded to earlier, this is where you will actually get the Fabric ID, which can be paired up if you have a license. So you can click download, and that'll go into your download folder on your laptop or desktop. So next, now that we've selected this location, we're going to walk through some of the more detailed data for what's needed to successfully submit a challenge. So this information is listed again here in the portal, what you'll need to gather. And we have provided a template for capturing the 3 different speed tests for this location. So you can download that template and fill it out. That template looks like this. So you have your test number, method, date, time, IP address. This is needed in addition to supporting documentation. So you can click and drag or click to upload. So I'm going to go here, and this is completed for the demo purposes. I'm then going to go in and click add the customer bill, and then I'm going to add the 3 different speed test evidence for this location. The final bit is the manual entry of the median download speed, the median upload speed calculated from those results that you're uploading, as well as the customer name that is on the bill. And finally here, what you're doing is you're confirming consent for this data to be submitted. In the event that it goes to an eligible entity that needs to rebut it, you're also consenting to them using this information, which is part of the challenge process. So after you confirm, you can hit next. And the final bit before submitting your challenge is this attestation. Basically you and your entity verifying that this that this data is true and accurate to the best of your knowledge. And once you confirm, you'll be able to submit a challenge. And there it goes. And when it's live and using real data, this will go back and populate in your dashboard as a challenge that you have successfully submitted. It will also be reflected on the map with a green highlight for a challenge that you have submitted. And that is it for the demonstration. Thank you all for your time and attention. And Laura, I'll send it back over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Clay. So if we can bring up the next slides, we're going to talk about some of the next steps that we have. And again, thank you again to Jonathan, Amy, and Clay for kind of going through the overview of the program, touching on what we can do for the portal and the registration. So next steps and also ways that you can continue to prepare to participate in the challenge process. So you are here today, so you know that we are having a webinar series. So attending the webinars, those are listed on our events page. You can register for office hours. Right now, we have 3 office hours that are available for registration. That is also on our events page. You can, as we went through today, pre-register to submit a challenge. So that's the pre-registration steps that we walked through. We will have the presentation and slides up no later than tomorrow, to be followed by a guide for walking through that process as well. As Amy talked about, you can request a CostQuest license. There are links specifically for the Tier D license and Tier E license. And then you can also sign up for email updates and news. So on the next slide here, we will talk about the upcoming webinars that we have. So next Tuesday, May 14th, we'll talk about the key differences between the Bead model challenge process that we've been talking about on our previous webinar on the 24th and again today, and what is in the CPUC's approved initial proposal volume 1 challenge process. Again, we do have some dependencies, so that is going before the commission tomorrow. If for some reason that is delayed, then we will push that out because we will need to have that approved in order to have that webinar. But if you keep checking back on the events page, we will have the updated information and link to register up there shortly. Thursday, May 16th, we are going to have a webinar talking about the challenge process for broadband service providers. Again, this is our the intended audience. Everyone is welcome to attend, but just know that kind of it will be tailored more toward what it looks like as a broadband service provider with a focus on rebuttals. Tuesday, May 21st, we touched on a little bit during this presentation, but we will be developing and providing a toolkit and resources for local governments, tribal governments, and nonprofits to be able to gather and submit challenges on behalf of individual residents. So that one is going to be a little bit longer session because we will have more to cover and just going over what the toolkit looks like and how you can outreach and gather that information from folks in your area. We also talked about office hours. So we will be conducting office hours the week of May 20th, 27th, and June 3rd. Those are currently up and available to sign up for on our events page. Those will be these are our webinars, and so the office hours are going to be an opportunity for us to have bidirectional communication. It's open to everyone. You will need to register, but we'll be doing that as a meeting, so you'll be able to come with your questions. We will be there to answer those questions and kind of talk through things with you, so be sure to sign up and register for those. Next slide. So if you have questions, as we've gone over today, you can now start registering in the portal. If you run into issues registering in the portal or need technical assistance, the help desk email is there for Ready, so you'll reach out to Ready for support with that. And then if you have general questions about the Bead program in California, you'll want to email the Bead team at the CPUC, and you can do that with the email address there. One of the things to kind of touch on is on we have 3 pages up for your resources. We have kind of the general information page on the CPUC's website. We have a page with a little bit more detail on the challenge process and information there. That will be updated as we have more information available and once we have the approval of the commission on IP Volume 1. We also have a Bead frequently asked questions page. We really appreciate your patience. We got a lot of questions from you on the 24th, and we are diligently going through those to provide thoughtful, thorough, and accurate answers for you to give you the best information to prepare for the challenge process. Next slide. So on behalf of the CPUC, we thank you so much for attending today, for being here with us to learn more about the pre-registration, the Tier D and E CostQuest licenses, and going through kind of this steps to submit a challenge in the portal. We will be providing more information. There will be upcoming webinars and guides. Once the portal goes live, we'll have a lot more information and guidance for you in advance of that. So please check back often for information on our website, and we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar. So thank you, and we hope that you have a wonderful day.